I gave her my love, my trust, and the best years of my life. But while I was building our future, she was busy destroying it, one lie at a time. When I found out the truth, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I planned. And when I was done, she lost everything. If this story moved you, please don't forget to give it a like. And if you love emotional, powerful stories like this one, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a moment. They say love blinds you. But in my case, it made me deaf, dumb, and foolish. I thought I had it all: a beautiful wife, a stable career, a home filled with warmth and laughter. Her name was Samira. She had this glow, soft eyes that could melt a glacier, a voice that could calm a storm. From the outside we looked like the perfect couple. In truth, we were a slow-burning tragedy, and I was the only one who couldn't smell the smoke. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it felt real. We were partners in everything. When I stayed late at work coding, she brought me dinner. When she had a tough day with clients, I listened without checking my phone. I remember one monsoon evening, she danced in the rain and dragged me out onto the balcony. We laughed like children, soaked to the skin. That night, she curled up beside me and said, "You're the only person who makes me feel safe." Moments like that kept me blind. Blind to the reality I would eventually be forced to see. We met at a marketing seminar in Banani. I was giving a talk on digital innovation. She was representing a top PR agency. I still remember how she interrupted me with a pointed question, bold and unapologetic. The room laughed, but I didn't. I was stunned, not just by her intellect, but by the spark in her. We argued that day. Then we had coffee. Then dinner. Then 3 years of growing together. We got married in a modest ceremony. No flashy hall, no elaborate show. Just us, a few close friends, and our vows. I remember how she looked in her soft ivory sari, like the future I had dreamed of. I promised her loyalty, laughter, and everything I could give. And I gave it, every bit of myself. The first year was bliss. We explored the city like newlyweds in a romance film. Friday mornings meant long breakfasts. Weekends were for movie marathons and last-minute road trip. We built a little life in our Gulshan apartment. The walls bore our photos, our books, our lazy Sunday habit. Then came pressure, careers rising, expectations tightening. I started my own tech consultancy. Late nights, business travel, sleepless coding sessions. She rose to becoming a respected PR strategist. Her name started appearing in magazines. She dressed sharper, spoke quicker, came home later. I didn't mind. I was proud of her. Until the warmth began to vanish. It started subtly. The spark in her eyes dimmed. Her laughter, once spontaneous, felt reserved. She'd sit on the couch with her laptop, responding to messages with a half smile. When I asked what was funny, she'd say, "Just work banter." We were drifting, and I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't present enough. Maybe I had gotten too consumed by deadlines and deliverables. I started trying harder, cooking her favorite meals, surprising her with notes, planning date nights. She appreciated it. Or at least, she pretended to. But I could feel her slipping. I remember the night she came home smelling different. Not perfume, something unfamiliar. I held her close, and she pulled away with a gentle excuse. That was the night I first allowed the thought, what if she's seeing someone else? I hated myself for even thinking it. I had always believed in trust. That without it, love was nothing but illusion. But illusions were all I had left. I didn't want to believe my wife, my Samira, could be capable of betrayal. So I silenced that voice. I chose denial. I clung to our memories. Still, the distance grew. Her phone was always locked now. Password changed. Notifications hidden. She'd step onto the balcony to take calls, her voice hushed and intimate. When I walked into a room, her fingers would dart to close windows on her laptop. And yet, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I told myself, she's stressed. She needs space. She's not cheating, she's just overwhelmed. After all, don't all relationships have rough patches? But denial can't last forever. One evening, we were at a dinner party. I watched her from across the room. She was talking to a man, tall, sharply dressed, a familiar face from her office stories. Their conversation was animated, too close, too intimate. She laughed in a way she hadn't with me in months. He placed a hand on her back briefly. She didn't flinch. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside her, listening to the sound of her steady breathing. I stared at the ceiling and felt my chest cave in. I wanted to shake her awake and ask, scream, cry. But I stayed still, paralyzed by the weight of suspicion. If I confronted her and I was wrong, I'd shatter the little that remained between us. But if I stayed silent, I might be allowing her to shatter me. In the morning, I kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong. Then I began searching for the truth. And what I found would rewrite the story of my life forever. Finding the truth wasn't as easy as snooping through her phone or catching her red-handed. Samira was meticulous. Every trace of her secrets had been swept away, tucked neatly behind locked apps, silent notifications, and fake calendar entries. But she underestimated one thing: my desperation. Desperation, when driven by heartbreak, is a powerful force. The first thing I did was borrow one of my tech team's older phones and install spyware. I mirrored her messages. It wasn't legal. It wasn't moral. But I needed clarity. I couldn't move on, not until I knew. And then, it happened. It was a Friday night. I was working late at the office when the messages started syncing. Her texts came through in real time. The first few were mundane, colleague jokes, office updates. Then, a message popped up, "Miss you already," followed by a heart emoji. The reply, "Me too. She'll never know." My hands trembled. I clicked open the full thread. There it was. Weeks of flirtation. Intimate jokes. Inside references. Voice notes. Pictures, some innocent, others far less so. My wife. The woman I made vows to. Laughing, teasing, loving someone else. And he wasn't just anyone. He was the same man from the party. Jahid. She called him Jay. Said he made her feel alive again. Said she didn't feel like just someone's wife when she was with him. That she was more than laundry, groceries, and dinner plans. That he saw her. Saw her? I thought I did. Every single day. I sat at my desk for hours, numb. I replayed every message. Every audio. I watched my marriage disintegrate through a 6.5-inch screen. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I felt like I had left my own body. I watched from a distance as my world cracked. The next few days I pretended. That's the cruelest part. She came home, kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day. I made pasta. She complimented the taste. We even watched a movie together, curled under the same blanket. And all the while, I knew she had been in his arms just hours before. I became an actor in my own life. But pretending gave me time to plan. I didn't want a messy confrontation. I didn't want to scream, break plates, beg her to stop. That would give her power. No, I wanted to break her silence with something colder. Something that would freeze her in place. I didn't know what yet. But I knew I had to be patient. So I dug deeper. I hired a private investigator. Discreet. Professional. I gave him a week. He gave me a full timeline. The affair had started 6 months ago. Office meetings led to late-night dinners, then drinks, then hotel rooms. The hotel receipts alone were damning. Paired with location tracking, security camera photos, and a few lucky videos, it was airtight. She wasn't just cheating. She had made him her second life. I couldn't understand it. Was I that invisible? Had our marriage become so hollow that she needed a new one behind my back? I started losing sleep. I'd lie beside her, staring into the dark, listening to the steady rhythm of her breath. There were nights I thought about waking her up and confronting her, demanding an explanation. But I didn't want her to lie to me again. I wanted her to see what truth really felt like. The day everything snapped was ordinary. We were having lunch in our dining room. She was scrolling through her phone. I was stirring my tea. She looked up and smiled. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Just tired," I replied. "Work's been heavy." "Same," she said with a sigh. The PR campaign with Jahid's firm is driving me mad. He's too particular. I looked at her then. That was the moment I knew she felt no guilt. She sat across from me, bold enough to lie to my face about the man she was sleeping with. Her eyes didn't even flicker. And that's when the pain began to turn into something else, resolve. I waited for her to leave for a weekend trip with colleagues. I followed. I booked the same hotel she did. Took the room right above hers. I watched them meet in the lobby. Watched them hold hands. Laugh. Enter her room. I called the investigator. Record it. Everything. He did. That footage broke whatever was left of my illusions. But it also gave me power. She returned Sunday night, exhausted. Said it was a long weekend full of back-to-back workshops. I nodded. Kissed her forehead. Told her I missed her. She smiled and said, I missed you too. What a beautiful lie. The next morning, I contacted my lawyer. I filed for divorce under Section 13, citing irretrievable breakdown due to adultery. I submitted all my evidence. The lawyer was stunned. She won't get anything, he said. You've built an airtight case. Good. But I wasn't done. She had just been shortlisted for a massive PR deal, an international project with a multinational brand that would skyrocket her reputation. Her final interview was scheduled for the following Monday. That Friday, I sent an anonymous email to the firm. Attached were details of the affair, corporate misuse of company resources, and video evidence. I made sure it sounded professional. No emotion. Just cold, factual reporting of ethical violations. Monday morning, she came home early. She looked pale. Broken. They dropped me, she whispered. No explanation. Just said they were going in a different direction. I nodded. That's unfortunate. She looked up, her eyes filled with panic. Do you think someone found out? About me and Jahid? I shrugged. Would it matter if they did? She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear. And for the first time, I didn't feel anything at all. The flicker of fear in Samira's eyes stayed with me longer than I expected. It didn't satisfy me. It didn't make me feel powerful. If anything, it deepened the quiet, hollow ache inside me, the ache of knowing the person you love isn't real, and the person sitting across from you is a beautifully constructed mask. After her failed pitch, she moved around the house like a ghost. She stopped humming in the kitchen. Her phone stayed mostly silent. She hardly ate. Part of me wanted to ask if she was okay. But I reminded myself that this emptiness was of her own making. I hadn't done this to her. She had betrayed me, disrespected me, and lied to my face for months. But what hurt more than anything was that she hadn't confessed, not once. Not even when everything started falling apart. She still tried to act like it was the world conspiring against her instead of facing the consequences of her own actions. That cowardice. That was worse than the betrayal itself. I knew I had to move swiftly. The court hearing for our divorce was scheduled in 2 weeks. I instructed my lawyer to make it public, to ensure it was listed where it could be seen by anyone in the industry. I didn't need to humiliate her, but I needed the truth to be undeniable. I didn't want whispers. I wanted facts. Meanwhile, the private investigator delivered a second file. Jahid's wife. Her name was Nusrat. She was beautiful, graceful. A schoolteacher. They had 2 children, both under 10. Her eyes in the photos looked kind, patient, and perhaps, like mine, tired of being in the dark. I wrestled with whether I should send her the evidence. Was it my place? Was it too cruel? But then I remembered every night I spent pretending not to know. Every lie I swallowed just to protect a marriage that Samira had already buried. So I sent it. No signature. No message. Just a folder labeled Truth. 3 days later, she called me. Is this Armin? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes. This is Nusrat. Jahid's wife. Silence. I got the file, she whispered. I thought something was off, but I never imagined this. Not like this. I'm sorry, I said genuinely. I know it's a lot. She breathed heavily. Thank you. For the truth. We talked for nearly an hour. Two strangers, bonded by betrayal. She cried. I didn't. I had no more tears left. Only fire. She said she would leave him. That she couldn't raise her children in a home filled with secrets and silence. I respected her strength. And I realized I had more to learn from her than I expected. The next morning, Samira came into the kitchen, her expression tight. Jahid's wife knows, she said bluntly. I didn't look up from my coffee. Good. She stared at me. Did you? I looked at her then. Not with anger. Not with hurt. Just clarity. She deserved to know. Just like I did. Tears welled up in her eyes. Armin, please. This is spiraling out of control. I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. It spiraled out of control the day you let him into our bed with your lies. I didn't mean for this to happen. No one ever does. But you did it anyway. She sat down. For the first time in weeks, she looked human. Vulnerable. Small. Why didn't you just confront me? She asked. Why go through all this? The exposure, the divorce, the destruction. I stared into her eyes. Because I needed you to feel what I felt. Not just for a moment. For as long as it takes. You broke something sacred. And I wanted to make sure you never forget that. She sobbed. Quietly. Head in her hands. I felt nothing. She moved into her sister's house the following day. I didn't say goodbye. And yet, my chest felt heavier. Not lighter. I thought revenge would bring closure. But closure doesn't come from watching someone fall. It comes from choosing not to look back. Still, there was more to clean up. I contacted my company's PR team and gave them a statement in case questions arose about my personal life. I kept it neutral, dignified. Facts only. I knew the rumors would fly, but the truth had a way of making its own noise. Then came the public notice. Divorce. Citing infidelity. Her name was listed. So was mine. The reaction was immediate. Her firm distanced themselves. A few colleagues reached out to me privately, some offering support, others apologies for not seeing it sooner. Her circle of friends shrank almost overnight. She sent me an email. Just 4 words, please stop. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. You don't get to ask for mercy after you danced on someone's heart. 1 week later, I met Nusrat for coffee. No motives. No agenda. Just 2 people who had survived emotional war zones. She looked more composed. Calmer. I filed for divorce, she said. He begged. Said it meant nothing. I nodded. They always say that when they're caught. She sipped her tea. You look better than I expected. Stronger. I'm surviving, I said. That's all. We didn't talk about the past much after that. We talked about healing. About the future. About what trust meant and how fragile it is. That coffee turned into a friendship. A safe place to land on difficult days. Samira, meanwhile, tried to rebuild. I heard she applied for a PR role in another city. Smaller firm. Less visibility. No one wanted to be associated with scandal. She called once. I didn't answer. Closure wasn't in her apology. Closure was in knowing I didn't need her words anymore. The court finalized our divorce. She got nothing, not out of cruelty, but because I protected myself. I kept every receipt. Every document. Every lie. When I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. And freedom, I realized, is the most beautiful form of revenge. I thought finalizing the divorce would be the end of it. But heartbreak doesn't obey paperwork. It lingers in familiar places, in the silence of a half-empty apartment, in the way sunlight hits the dining table where she once sat. Freedom tasted bittersweet. I had cut the chain, but the bruises still ached. The first few mornings were the hardest. I'd wake instinctively and turn to the left side of the bed, only to see it empty. Sometimes I'd reach for my phone, thinking to text her something funny or tell her about my day, before remembering that she no longer belonged in those small, daily habits. And yet, I didn't miss her. Not the real her. I missed the version of her I believed in. The wife I thought I had, the one who held my hand at weddings, who whispered, "I love you," when she thought I was asleep, who danced barefoot in the kitchen. That woman was a ghost now. A beautiful lie. I threw myself into work. It was the only place I could feel in control. My company was thriving, we had landed a new international client. I barely slept, buried in deadlines and presentations. It wasn't healthy, but it was necessary. Nusrat and I stayed in touch. There was something soothing about her presence. We didn't talk about our exes anymore. We talked about movies, books, her kids, my travel plans. It was easy, natural. We were healing side by side. One evening, I went to pick up a parcel and ran into Samira. She looked different. Leaner. Dull-eyed. She wore no makeup, and her posture had lost its usual poise. She froze when she saw me. "Armin," she said softly. I nodded politely. "Samira." She swallowed. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then gestured to a bench nearby. We sat in silence for a while before she finally spoke. "I lost everything." I didn't respond. "My job, my friends. Even my parents don't look at me the same." "Actions have consequences," I said, not harshly, just truthfully. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I turned to her. "But you did. You made choices every single day that prioritized your desires over our marriage. You lied to me repeatedly. You slept next to me with his name in your messages. You didn't just hurt me. You ended me." She began to cry. "I thought he loved me. I thought I needed more. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." I stood up. "You realized too late." And I walked away. That was the last time I saw her. After that, I truly began to heal. Not just function, but feel again. I started reading more, going for long walks. I took a solo trip to Nepal. It was humbling, standing in the shadows of the mountains. Nature doesn't care about your heartbreak. It just exists, beautiful, vast, and silent. And in that silence, I found peace. One night, months later, Nusrat invited me to a small gathering. Her kids were at their grandparents', and she had cooked too much food, as she always did. It was just us, soft music playing, laughter flowing easily. "I don't think I could have done this without you," she said. I smiled. I could say the same. She looked at me then, not just as a friend, but as someone who saw me. Really saw me. Not the broken man, not the betrayed husband. Just Armin. We didn't rush into anything. We didn't need to. Our bond wasn't born out of desperation but understanding. We had both walked through fire, and we were still standing. A year passed. I moved into a new apartment. Brighter. Simpler. Mine. Nusrat and I started dating quietly. No drama. No labels. Just honesty. Her kids liked me. I liked them. It felt natural, like sunlight filtering through a once cloudy window. And Samira? Last I heard, she had moved abroad, trying to rebuild. I wished her no harm. I didn't hate her. I simply didn't care anymore. That's the real end to a heartbreak, not revenge, not justice, but indifference. Sometimes the ones who hurt us are the ones we loved most. But healing means choosing yourself again. Reclaiming your worth. Forgiving, not for them, but for your own peace. Because the most powerful revenge is living well. The quiet months after rebuilding felt like I was living in a different skin. There were moments of silence that once felt like torture, now, they felt sacred. Every time I passed by the restaurant where Samira and I once dined, or the bookstore where we spent hours browsing, I didn't flinch anymore. Nostalgia had softened. Pain had faded. These places were simply that, places. They no longer held power over me. Nusrat and I found rhythm in our new, unexpected partnership. Some days, we met for coffee just to rant about our busy schedules. Other days, we went walking through the city's older parts, talking about art, philosophy, and how strange it felt to be free from broken vows. One day, while at a street-side cafe in Danmondi, she said something that stuck with me. "You know, it's not betrayal that hurts most. It's the realization that you kept trying long after they stopped caring." She wasn't wrong. I had spent so much time begging a version of Samira to come back that I didn't notice she was already gone. That version existed only in my memories, not in reality. The truth was, I had loved an idea, not a person. Work kept me busy, but I started leaving room for life too. I took a cooking class just because. I started journaling again. And I even adopted a dog, a golden retriever I named Balo. He was messy, loud, needy, and exactly what I needed. He reminded me what it felt like to come home to someone who loved you, no questions asked. I had changed. Not just healed, transformed. People noticed. One afternoon, an old college friend messaged me out of the blue. He'd read a few cryptic social posts I made and wanted to grab lunch. He'd just gone through a breakup. His fiancée had called off their wedding weeks before. When we met, he said, "You seem different. Like someone who's been through hell and come out cleaner." I smiled. I have. And it wasn't fire that cleaned me, it was solitude. We talked for hours. I told him parts of my story. Not all, just enough to show him that he wasn't alone in his pain. Sometimes, just knowing someone else has made it out alive is enough. Later that week, I was invited to speak at a leadership seminar. The topic was resilience. I didn't mention my divorce or betrayal, but I spoke about rebuilding. About starting again when you feel like you've lost your identity. About choosing peace over pride. After the talk, a young woman approached me. She said, "Your words made me feel like I don't have to carry my mistakes forever." And that's when it hit me, my pain had become purpose. Maybe I went through all of it not just to learn, but to help someone else rise too. Nusrat continued to blossom as well. She started her own educational initiative, workshops for single mothers and women dealing with emotional abuse. Her story became her strength. Watching her grow was like witnessing a flower bloom in soil scorched by fire. We were both turning our past into power. A year and a half after the divorce, I received a letter. Handwritten. From Samira. I hesitated before opening it. It was short. Sincere, maybe. Apologetic, definitely. She said she had learned a lot. That she knew I would never forgive her, and she didn't expect me to. But she wanted to thank me for not humiliating her in public more than necessary. She had started therapy. She was working again, though on a smaller scale. She was trying to become someone new. And finally she wrote, "You deserved better. I hope you found it." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Not because I wanted to hold on to it, but because it no longer hurt to read her name. Forgiveness is strange. It doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means saying, "You no longer have the power to poison my thoughts." I had forgiven her. Not to give her peace, but to reclaim mine. In the spring of that year, Nusrat and I took the kids on a trip to Cox's Bazar. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even a milestone. It was just a memory we wanted to make. Watching the waves crash while her daughter built sandcastles and her son chased crabs, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Joy. Unfiltered. Quiet joy. Later that evening, as we sat under a makeshift canopy watching the stars appear, Nusrat leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "Do you think broken people can build something real?" I turned to her, smiling. "Only broken people can. Because they know the value of every piece." That night I realized, the story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about rediscovery. Rebirth. Rebuilding. Because when the ashes settle, what matters isn't what you lost, but what you rise to become. Love, after heartbreak, doesn't come back in loud declarations. It returns quietly, like sunlight through curtains after a long, stormy night. It doesn't feel like butterflies. It feels like safety. That's what I felt with Nusrat. It started with the small things. How she looked at me when I talked. How she laughed without checking her phone. How she didn't try to fix me, just made space for me to be myself. And I did the same for her. Our story didn't begin with sparks, it began with stillness. I remember one afternoon, we were sitting on the floor of her living room, surrounded by her kids' scattered schoolwork. She was folding laundry, and I was helping her arrange books back on the shelf. Her daughter climbed onto my lap with a drawing and said, "Uncle Armin, you look like a prince." Nusrat looked up, smiled gently, and said, "She's not wrong." I laughed. Not because of the compliment, but because in that messy, ordinary moment I felt something pure. Later that night, I walked home and sat on my balcony. I thought about all the things I had once wanted: glamour, recognition, a perfect image. Now all I craved was sincerity. And I had found it. We never rushed into labels. We didn't announce anything. We simply lived. Side by side. Weekend outings. Late-night chai runs. Supporting each other's work. The kids started calling me Mama Armin, half-jokingly, and slowly, I began to believe I could be part of a family again. But there were fears too. Some nights, I still questioned whether I deserved this peace. Whether trusting again made me naive. Whether I was building another glass castle waiting to be shattered. Nusrat noticed. One evening, she handed me a small, wrapped notebook. "This is for all the thoughts you're afraid to say," she said. "But don't forget, I'm still here. Even for the silent pages." I didn't know what to say. So I just hugged her. She had lost everything too, her home, her illusions, her future. But she hadn't let it turn her bitter. She rebuilt herself from the ground up, and I watched in awe as she turned pain into progress. Her educational workshops grew into a full nonprofit. She gave lectures at women's colleges. Media outlets started picking up her story, not as scandal, but as survival. And every time I stood beside her, I felt proud. Not possessive, just proud. One night, we sat on the rooftop of my apartment, city lights blinking in the distance. The wind was gentle, and the city felt less loud than usual. "Have you thought about us?" she asked. I nodded. "Every day." "I mean, what comes next?" I took her hand. "Whatever we want. No timelines. No pressure. Just real life together." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You know, I once thought love had to be dramatic to be real. But I was wrong. Real love is soft. It doesn't roar. It holds." She was right. It wasn't about declarations anymore. It was about staying. Through ordinary days. Through silence. Through growth. That's when I knew. I wasn't just healed. I was ready. Ready to love. Not because I needed someone to fill a void, but because I had so much more to give. The day I realized I wanted to marry again was unlike anything I had imagined. There was no lightning bolt, no grand epiphany. It was a Sunday morning. Nusrat was in the kitchen humming to herself, the kids were painting at the table, and I was sipping tea, watching the scene unfold like a dream I never dared to dream. I looked around, and instead of fear, I felt peace. That was it. That simple. Later that evening, I walked with Nusrat to the nearby lake. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The silence between us had grown sacred over time, unspoken understanding lived there. As we sat on the old stone bench beneath a fading sky, I took her hand. "I want to build something with you. Not because I need to, but because I choose to. Every day." She looked at me, her eyes soft, and said, "I've loved you quietly for a long time now. But this is the first time I'm saying it aloud." We didn't talk about marriage that night. We didn't need labels to prove what we were becoming. But a month later, I proposed. Not with a flash mob or a diamond ring in champagne. Just a handwritten letter and a simple question on the same rooftop where she first asked me, "What comes next?" She said yes. We married in a quiet ceremony, just a few loved ones, her children beside us, and the kind of happiness that doesn't need noise to be real. No big speeches, no cameras. Just love. Earned. Grown. Steady. During the vows, I didn't talk about the past. I talked about the future. About showing up even on the hard days. About never letting silence turn into distance again. About listening, holding, and choosing each other daily. When I looked at Nusrat in her light blue sari, her eyes filled with peace, I realized I didn't destroy Samira's life to win. I simply refused to let her destroy mine. Pain had once ruled my story. Now love was writing new chapters. People say that scars remain forever. And maybe they do. But scars are not wounds, they're proof that you healed. That you bled, broke, and came back stronger. Life didn't give me what I asked for. But it gave me what I needed. Not a perfect love. But a real one. Not revenge. But redemption. Not the wife I thought I wanted, but the partner I was meant for. And every time I wake up to a home filled with laughter instead of lies, I remember this. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that ever will. It's strange how life loops back in the quietest of ways. You think you've moved forward, only to find yourself face to face with a moment, a memory, or a person you never thought you'd meet again. That moment came on a rainy afternoon, 2 years after my wedding with Nusrat. I had taken the kids to a bookstore they loved, one that also had a small cafe. While they browsed, I stepped aside to grab coffee. That's when I heard my name. Arman. I turned, and there she was. Samira. She looked older, but softer. Not worn down, just changed. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, a quiet expression. She wasn't the woman I remembered from the courtroom, nor the one from our marriage. She was someone else entirely. We stood in silence for a moment, strangers in familiar skin. You look good, she said finally. Thank you, I replied. You too. There was an awkward pause, then she asked, Can I sit? We sat. No accusations. No bitterness. Just quiet reflection. I heard about your work, she said. The foundation. Your talks. You've done well. I nodded. I've had support. She smiled, a little sad. I wanted to say thank you, again, for how you handled everything, for not dragging me more than necessary. I shrugged. I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting myself. I know, she said softly. Still, you didn't have to be kind. And you were. We sat there a while, sipping tea, two people whose story had ended a long time ago. Finally, she said, I'm happy for you. Truly. I hope you stay happy. And I believed her. When she left, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. That evening, I told Nusrat. She listened, asked a few questions, and then simply said, I'm glad she got to see what you became. Not out of revenge. Just so she knows you rose. And I did. From betrayal, I rose. From brokenness, I built. From ashes, I found light. And now, I lived in a home where love was real, trust was sacred, and the past no longer held me hostage. The story of Samira had ended, but it didn't define me. It shaped me, yes, but I chose what came after. That's the power of healing. You don't rewrite the beginning, but you get to choose the ending. And this life, this love, this peace was the ending I chose. Life, I've learned, isn't about the chapters that break us, but the ones we choose to write after. In the years that followed my encounter with Samira, I didn't just live. I grew. Not upward like a flame, but outward like roots, reaching deep into everything that made life beautiful again. Nusrat and I settled into our new rhythm. We weren't just husband and wife. We were teammates, best friends, partners in the quiet chaos of everyday life. Her children, my children now in every sense but blood, became my anchors. Each bedtime story, each school event, each scraped knee reminded me that love isn't grand gestures. It's presence. It's patience. My foundation grew too. What began as a support group for men facing betrayal expanded into community outreach. We held workshops on emotional resilience, healing through storytelling, rebuilding after loss. People came with open wounds, left with stitched hearts. One man, Rashid, stood out. He came in broken, mid-divorce after discovering his wife's affair. He didn't speak during the first 3 sessions. Just listened. On the 4th, he shared his story, trembling. And afterward, he hugged me. You didn't just help me heal, he said. You showed me it was possible. That's when I knew, my story wasn't just mine. It was a bridge. And Nusrat, she bloomed. Her non-profit became a voice for marginalized women. Media outlets began inviting her to speak, universities asked her to lead seminars. Every time she stood at a podium, she carried the fire of a woman who had rebuilt herself, one shard at a time. We never flaunted our love, but it showed in how we cared. Grocery runs turned into mini-date. Rainy days became movie marathons with popcorn and blanket. On Sundays we cooked together, her biryani, my butter chicken, the kids' endless snacks. and in all that ordinary magic, I realized something profound. Love is not the cure to heartbreak. It's the reward. One morning, while walking Balo through the park, I bumped into an old friend, someone who had seen me during my darkest days. He looked surprised. "You look different," he said. "I am," I replied. "Hurt changed me, but healing made me new." He smiled. "I remember you said once, 'I'll never love again.'" I chuckled. "I didn't. I learned how to love right." We laughed, then parted ways. That night, Nusrat and I sat under the stars. No words, just the quiet music of peace. And I thought back to the beginning. To the pain. To the betrayal. To the night I discovered I'd been replaced in my own marriage. And I felt no anger. Only gratitude. Because if Samira hadn't broken me, I would have never rebuilt this life. A life not defined by revenge, but by redemption. A love not born from fear, but from freedom. A home not built on illusions, but truth. I had once been betrayed. But now I was whole. Years passed, and the seasons blurred into one another, soft spring mornings, golden summers, the gentle quiet of winter. The pain that had once burned through me like wildfire was now only an ember, resting quietly in the corners of memory. My life had changed in every way that mattered, and Samira had become nothing more than a distant shadow. Then came the letter. It arrived on a crisp autumn day, hand-delivered by a courier. No sender's name. Just my name, written in a familiar hand. I opened it slowly, not out of fear, but curiosity. It was from Samira. She was living abroad, working in a small PR agency far removed from her once glamorous career. The letter was reflective, filled with thoughts on forgiveness, time, and healing. She admitted to years of therapy. She spoke about regret, not for the downfall, but for not choosing to be honest when it mattered. The final line read, "I hope you found the happiness I now understand I was never capable of giving you." I sat with those words for a long time. Then I folded the letter and tucked it into my drawer, beside my journal. It no longer sparked anger or sadness. It was just a reminder of how far I'd come. That evening, I watched Nusrat play cards with the kids, their laughter spilling into the room like sunlight. I looked around, at the home we had built, the walls filled with artwork and memories, the shelves cluttered with books and toys. This was the life Samira never touched. Not because she wasn't part of my story, but because she never had the strength to stay in it. And I had written every chapter since with intention, with heart, with courage. The pain she gave me gave birth to a purpose. The betrayal she left me with led me to a love that held firm through storms. I didn't destroy her life. I simply walked away from the wreckage she created, and never looked back. This is the story of a man who lost everything he thought he needed, only to find everything he truly deserved. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful revenge of all.